Hi guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we have a very special guest, one of our good friends from WIT, Brad Welch. Brad, welcome. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me, boys.
Our pleasure. Just for the listeners, give us a bit of background. Who are you? Commando Fitness. Tell us the story. How have you got to where you are today?
Okay, so we'll start kind of back in 2012. So I left the Royal Marines in 2012. Unfortunately, was discharged for a labrum tear in my hip, which then kind of led me into the sporting route. So PT initially. So I was working at Virgin Active for nearly 2 years. Rob knows that well. So High Street Kensington, and then moved to Gymbox on more of a freelance basis. During that time, I was completing my masters at St Mary's in strength and conditioning, and decided then down that route to go down the route of kind of endurance athletes. So during my masters, everyone was doing the typical football, rugby, or cricket kind of research and topics. And speaking to my head lecturer there, I was kind of intrigued more so by the endurance sports because of the injuries that I sustained myself during the Marines. And then there was kind of a light bulb moment of like, oh, actually, if I had this problem doing 30, 40 Ks, then other people must be having this problem as well. Then once I finished at St Mary's, during my time at Gymbox, I picked up my first kind of endurance athlete, which was kind of by accident, really. She just found me on actually talking with social media, and started to kind of inquire about kind of the Marine background. And then suddenly was like, oh, actually, I'd like to work with you. And through her, luckily, she was quite well known in the Nike community, so in the Nike trail running community. And then from that, it just kind of slowly grew from there. So in 2015, midway through 2015, I moved to Motor Strength in Chelsea, which was basically a private S&C facility. So there was a couple of coaches there, just like me and Sam Peppies were the two main coaches. And then from there, I started to delve into initially like remote coaching because I had a couple clients outside of London, ultra runners who wanted to work with me at that time, but obviously it wasn't feasible for them to come into London. So this was back in the day of like the good old Excel spreadsheets and actually putting some work in and doing the good old like art side of programming rather than having it super easy on True Coach and going on there and everything's done for you. So then towards the end of 2016, once I'd kind of established a good enough base, and by that I mean kind of 5 to 7 clients that I was seeing 1 to 3 times a week within the running community, I started to work a bit more remotely, just with 2 to 3 clients. Again, it wasn't nothing amazing. It was generally like some prehab stuff first. It wasn't necessarily aimed at like specific races. And again, it just started to grow. So from 2016, it kind of really started to push on it. And then 2 years there, and then 2018, I left Motor Strength. I kind of had enough of the one-to-one hours, if I'm honest. I mean, I was doing kind of 30 hours a week there, which I was really happy with. But again, I was kind of fed up of the super early mornings and the late finishes and kind of in the day having these big gaps. And we was living like really close to the gym as well. So it was a good opportunity to kind of work on a bit more of a remote basis with people. So I just simply put it towards current clients that I was seeing. And initially it started off like if I was seeing a client, let's say 3 times a week, we'd go down to 1 session a week in person and they'd do some sessions on their own. And then from there it just started to grow. And then when we found out we was having a little one, we decided that we was going to move to Spain. So then it was kind of fully remote. So like no one-to-ones, no in-person stuff, and basically started to build that. And again, thankfully, it kind of took off quite quickly. Again, I just think because of at that time, kind of 2-3 years ago, I was probably one of the only ones who was specifically saying like I'm a coach for this type of person. Outside of like body composition stuff. And no one was really doing that. So I feel like it was kind of just a good time to like kind of make that like ground.
Make yourself known as a figure.
Yeah, and luckily I had a few clients who were again kind of well known in the running community. So again, word of mouth is a huge thing, and that referral scheme was where all my clients were coming from. Even to this day, I mean, 90% of my clients are referral based. So yeah, at that time, I just think I was quite lucky that I had clients who were able to kind of put my name around. Because again, I mean, a couple of years ago, Instagram obviously wasn't as big as what it is now. So you was putting stuff on social and it wasn't really taking off how it does now. So word of mouth was a huge thing. And then, yeah, over the past couple of years, it's just slowly grown even more so. And kind of done like side projects on top of that, again, all remote based. Yeah, and then which leads us back here. So came back to London last year. And again, the remote stuff, once I actually got back to London, weirdly, it took off even more so. I'm not sure why, because again, nothing actually changed in terms of the model itself. Maybe people just, I don't know, like to have someone in London just in case. I'm not sure why. But yeah, so it took off like hugely from there. So I've kind of been like, I guess, almost like oversubscribed on BW Commando Fitness in the past year and a half, which is a really nice feeling. And that doesn't mean I've got 30 clients. It means I've got X amount of clients that I feel I can still give 100% to and add value to them without getting kind of overloaded with work. So yeah, hence why I then created like a side project, Run Strong, which again works with any runner from your 5K up to your ultra marathon. And that's in collaboration with two of my clients, Hannah and Emily. And there's alternative benefits to that in terms of like nutritional stuff, race events like discounts, free entries to a lot of things, seminars, and all this type of thing. And then towards the end of last year, Jordan and Shelley, who you know really well, approached me with an idea to kind of combine my skill set, kind of in the endurance world, with kind of the CrossFit aspect, and create what is now known as Beyond Programming. So again, Jordan kind of takes care of all the gymnastics and your typical kind of CrossFit stuff within that, and I take care of the strength and conditioning and kind of your endurance aspect to that. We kind of combine that, and we have kind of multiple packages within that we can offer to clients depending on their goal. So yeah, currently at the moment, so I've got 3 kind of projects running. Obviously, main project is my own personal ultra running client base, and then outside of that, there's a couple others. But yeah, that's pretty much.
How have you found it? Since having the little one, how have you found all the program? I guess remote coaching has been pretty ideal since you've had your kid.
Yeah. So when he was born, I mean, I took about 3 months of training when he was initially born. Like, I mean, by train, I mean if we used to training 5-6 times a week, I was training twice a week.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. One, because I mean, the missus just needed to recover and have some time, and I wanted to kind of help in that aspect. So obviously, going to the gym for 4 hours wasn't gonna work too well, as you'll know, Rob. Also, I didn't want to miss out on the first kind of couple months with the little one. Again, from speaking to you, Faisal, and other friends who had recently had children, obviously that was like a big thing. Like, that time goes so quick. So I wanted to kind of have that time, but then actually it gave me huge amounts of time to focus on the remote stuff as well, because I was still keeping like a very kind of structured routine with kind of like times I was waking up and stuff like that. So I was able to get like 2-3 hours of work in first thing in the morning before the baby even woke up, which then enabled me to have the whole day kind of free. And I kind of do that to this day. So I still wake up at silly o'clock and kind of get kind of my training in, and then work for 2-3 hours, and then I'm kind of done for the day. Yeah, and it just kind of worked really well with the baby. Obviously, there was days where it was impossible because he didn't sleep well or I didn't sleep well, so you kind of just have to let it be. But generally, it didn't really affect it too much. If anything, it gave me more time, I guess, because I was so kind of structured with my routine, because you have to be.
Yeah.
That it was like, okay, from 6 a.m. till 8 a.m. I'm going to work, and then that's it. And then I'll reply to the emails from 4 till 5 p.m. as such, around kind of nap times and all these things. So yeah, it actually didn't affect it too much.
That's good. I guess like when you're talking about the routine that you created when you had your son, that it's not like what now obviously with the corona stuff, how people are now trying to create this remote model where they don't have any systems, they don't have routines, so they're trying to, obviously we've now been in lockdown for nearly 6 weeks, I think it is, or something like that. So it's like they've now created a new routine within this, but the systems and stuff that goes with remote coaching, I guess, haven't been built up as much as obviously you've had like 4 to 5 years of basically getting yourself ready. So I definitely feel that as a remote coach in the current situation, in the current climate, how do you see it going? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, firstly, it's great, right, that so many people now have access to multiple trainers, right, or trainers of their choice that potentially before wasn't offering a remote service. But then the problem with that is kind of, as we were talking about before this started, is that you're kind of flooded. So say if you're a client and you don't really know, you don't have too much knowledge in kind of your goal that you want to achieve, and you go on, let's say, Instagram, and you see 100 trainers who are all delivering the same content, right? You don't know who's really good or who's kind of copied what they're posting, right? There's no way to kind of like verify what they're putting up, right? So it can be quite confusing. And then the problem is that that client then goes with a coach who potentially isn't the best suit for them, let's say.
Yeah.
And then they have a bad experience with remote coaching, and then they're kind of scared away from it, and then they just go down the route of Instagram workouts every day, jumping from this person to this person, and over this lockdown period they're just annihilating themselves pretty much, rather than having that progressive system in place. But I think if you're in this time, if you're delivering good content on social first, which is enticing people and keeping them engaged, that's kind of a great way to start building your remote service, rather than just like, say you've been doing one-to-one PT and then during the lockdown he was like, oh, now suddenly I'm gonna start to do remote stuff. What everyone does is just create this package, right, straight away. I'm now offering this, where actually, in my opinion, you'd be better off suited spending a bit more time on your social media first, because ultimately that's your website, right? So putting up really good content in terms of what you think is your niche area, if you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one, and just seeing how that goes first, because otherwise, like I've been seeing over the past couple of days, like these new remote coaches have created these packages, and obviously they haven't taken off how they thought it was going to, and then so now they're just doing like the same like rubbish ultimately as everyone else, like these free Zoom workouts where they're doing like burpees and like tuck jumps, and there's no value to that, right, other than a calorie burn and a quick sweat. Like, that's not going to give you a kind of a steady income over the months and months, because we don't know how long kind of gyms will be shut for, right? So I think people are too quick to jump into this package and it's £100, because that sounds like a good price. Where actually, if you build your social first and add value in that, once you do then create a package, or actually you might just have people start messaging you about coaching, right? So then you go down it that way, which I think is like a better route to get into remote coaching initially.
Agreed.
Nice.
I was just going to say, can we go back one step? I wanted to ask about your injury and why endurance. Can we get a little bit more detail on just sort of the story there? What did you learn from it? And
so, as I said, I tore my labrum in my right hip. Again, it's just a kind of a overloaded aspect of being in the military in general, yomping, okay, with heavy load, kind of closed hip flexor all the time with your Bergen on, and you don't train how you should. Or what a job of the Marine, when you think of it, is all about kind of yomping, covering ground very quickly, right? But you don't train like that. When you go to the gym with the other lads in your unit, you're generally just doing bench press and the biggest balls as such, right? And eventually it's going to come to bite you in the arse, because the injury rate in the military is so high. I mean, from like sprains to ligament tears, tendon tears, like breakages, because ultimately it's changed slightly now, I think, in the past couple of years, in terms of kind of they have like a real kind of structured S&C plan in place. But I mean, 5-10 years ago, there wasn't any of that in place, really. For instance, your warm-up before you do like any type of speed march or test would be kind of some high knees, some standing rotations, and you're good to go. Basically anything that gets the heart rate up without any specific stuff to it. So as a consequence of kind of a build up over a couple years, had the injury, had the option of either having surgery or kind of rehabbing it outside, but both ultimately meant I'd be discharged anyway. Just because even with the surgery, the rehab plan is obviously, actually, if you'll know, is a very long process. It's not a quick turnaround, right? So in terms of being in the military, you're kind of useless as such, and they're better off getting rid of you and just bringing in new recruits, right? So once I left there, I decided not to go down the route of surgery because I was only 21 at the time, and like way too young to have surgery on the hip. So started working with physio, and so for like 2 years was working consistently with physio, who managed to kind of get me back to a good place. And then as I started doing kind of my masters, again started to learn stuff myself, speak to peers, and kind of have input from them, and kind of rehabbed myself, I guess, with the help of others, successfully. And then from that, it was again speaking to my head lecturer about kind of what route we could go down with papers and stuff like that. Kind of, like I said, everyone was doing predominantly rugby. I'd say 70% of my group were like rugby based, which I had no interest in. Like, I just found it like these guys just walking around in like wasp tracksuits. All right, mate, I know you work for a rugby team, calm down. Like, it just didn't interest me. And then football, again, kind of didn't really interest me in terms of, to be fair, at that point, it was kind of like the pay structure. Like, speaking to guys who were already working in football, for instance, like the pay is pretty bad for someone who actually works with like that level of like player or athlete. And then the other one was a popular one was cricket, which again I had no interest in whatsoever. So yeah, there was kind of like speaking to my lecturer, like a light bulb moment, I guess, in kind of like, well, there must be so many other people who have had these kind of issues from endurance sport. Yeah. And at that time, I didn't really know about ultra running, so I was thinking more in the lines of marathon. That seemed like crazy to me at the time. Like, oh, someone's like, remember the days when like someone was running a marathon, and you'd be like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But when now, it's kind of like it's double that. If someone's running 100k, you're like, whoa, like so it's progressed.
Ironman, and it's just part of it. A marathon's part of it. Oh yeah, and that I'll do that at the end.
Yeah, so it's changed too. So at that time, I was thinking about more kind of, I guess, your half marathon, your marathon runners who are having injuries. And speaking to the physio that I was working with at the time, they were having a lot of runners going in the clinic as well. So it was just something that, kind of, I guess, accidentally fell into. And then slowly started to kind of build everything in my masters around that, and then slowly started to kind of get in with the running community through like attending run clubs. Like when Nike used to do run clubs from Westfield, like back in the day, I just used to go to them. Like I had no interest in running at that time. Because after leaving the military, I kind of hated running because I associated it with obviously like bad things.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was simply a case of like go there, speak to people, meet people, let them know that I work at Gym Box in Westfield as well. Like, do you know what I mean? It was kind of like, I guess, subtle like marketing, which kind of worked. Like you need to put yourself out there. In some aspect, and then from that just slowly started to kind of build that client base.
Nice, mate. And then you got the bug yourself as well. You've done some big races recently, smashed your 10k.
Yeah, so I think it was in maybe like 2000 and what was it, 17, I guess. I had a client who offered me a chance to do a trail run, which was like, I think it was like 47k, and I was like, absolutely not. like I'm not doing that. And I went home and told the missus, and she was like, you should do it. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I was like, absolutely not. And then so I declined that offer, but then this particular client was like very persistent. Like, you should come run with me, you should come do the session with me, you should come do this. And so slowly I started doing like track sessions first and more speed focused stuff, and then slowly just like, again, I guess by accident, like week on week I was like, actually my mileage is now this and I'm feeling quite good, or my pace is now this and I feel really good. And then it got to a point, where I guess I got that bug again, and then I was asking the client like, "Oh, can you get me a space for this race?" So again, like I've done like a few half marathons, like a few 10Ks at the time, which I didn't really enjoy. I hate like road running.
Yeah.
In like these big events, it's quite overwhelming with the crowds and stuff like that. You can't really focus on what you need to focus on in terms of like your breathing and stuff like that. And you get caught up in external things that throw you off. So kind of done a few half marathons, then done London Marathon in 2018. And I guess that was the changing point. So I done London Marathon in 2018, hated it. Absolutely hated it. Like it was the hottest London Marathon record. You remember that year? It was like it was terrible. Like my taper run 2 weeks before was like 8 degrees, raining in Richmond Park, perfect. Turn up on the day and like I got like hydration wrong, like everything wrong, and had kind of a terrible experience with it.
Was when you were about to do the marathon, was you then you'd already got the bug then, and you started thinking more about how to run properly then at that point basically, because it's just funny because my experience with the London Marathon was because I didn't really train for it properly or do anything like that. I was cycling thinking that this was going to help me run. I thought I loved the day because it was just I didn't think about anything but everything around me. And at the time, this was back in the first Virgin once, I think it was like 2012, and it was just like such a good experience. But it's funny that say a running athlete like yourself, say, who it's funny, but for the amount that you've done, it's funny how the experience that you had on such a say like a coined event, if you know what I mean, because it's such a everyone knows the London Marathon.
Yeah. No, honestly, I had like the worst experience. My training for it, so I had like a 6-month training block for it, and I actually really enjoyed it. Like it was great. But then after my taper run, I don't know, my enthusiasm for it was kind of gone. I felt like I kind of like peaked too early. So again, like training cycles and all these type of things, I'd done things wrong in my own training. So I felt like I peaked for my taper run. And then I was just like ruined basically. So my recovery for these couple of weeks was terrible. Then, like I said, on the day the weather did not help. So I got hydration wrong, fueling, everything just went completely wrong. And like got to like mile, I think 12 or 13, and was just like dead, like complete, like just ruined. Like I went off way too fast because I was running with someone. And like talking to them, and normally I train on my own, so I don't talk to no one. I can control my breathing, and the best way, obviously, you're talking to someone, it's going to elevate that. And just had a terrible time. So after that, I was like, I'm never doing road races again. And kind of just at that time, trail running was becoming popular. I had like a few clients who were doing trail runs, but ultra running in the UK was starting to become kind of more of a thing. There was more events being added to the calendar. So I had the clients start to sign up for races, and then through clients, I was lucky enough to be offered, do you want to do this 50k, do you want to do this 60k, and then that ended up in like last year being like the big goal of the 100k. And I just really enjoyed it. Like I enjoy the ultra running side of things for, I guess it sounds really sad, but like the loneliness of it, like being able to like just switch off for like 5-6 hours, let's say, when you're training runs, whatever it is. Like I'm very comfortable just like on my own. Like I kind of like that thinking space. Obviously, so many people are different. Like I have clients who need to run with people, but I really enjoyed that time. And like last year with the little one as well, it was kind of my release away from being like a dad and that pressure. Just, like go into the mountains and just like disappear for like 4 or 5 hours. And it was like great, and I really enjoyed it. Like I had help from an old PTI in the Marines who's an ultra runner with my training block, because again it was kind of uncharted territory for me, so I didn't really know the finer details of it. So I brought him in to kind of help me with that, and it went kind of as perfectly as it could, and ended up loving the 100k. Don't get me wrong, it was painful as hell at points, but was really pleased like with my time and kind of my overall kind of fueling systems and how everything kind of worked within that. And then after that, it was like, okay, now I've just like got the bug completely. And it's just kind of gone from there. Obviously, this year's changed route slightly just because of all the cancellations. But hopefully, I've still got a couple big races towards the end of this year if they still go ahead, which involves the 250k. But
how long does that take?
That's over 4 days.
Wow.
So it's in Jordan. It's in the desert.
Wow.
Oh mate.
So yeah, so I had a client do it last year, and she said it was one of the best experiences of her life. And she's a kind of a veteran in the ultra running world. So for her to say that it was quite a big thing. She had, in terms of the support team and everything, it was really kind of well run and organised. So yeah, so hopefully if that doesn't get postponed, that'll be the big one. I was meant to do another 100k kind of as a training run for that this year, but obviously that's been cancelled.
Yeah.
A training run. It's insane.
Well, how does that compare to how does that compare to Marathon des Sables? Is that not something similar?
Marathon, yeah. Marathon des Sables is obviously a lot more well known.
Yeah.
It's bigger up. So the Ultra X who run the one that I'll be doing in Jordan, they're new. They literally started last year.
Right.
So they have 4 events overall. So they have Jordan, they have Mexico, Australia, and where is the other one? Somewhere in Europe. So they have basically 4 events, all extreme, ultra, 200, 250Ks. So my client done Jordan last year, and I think there was about 100 people doing it as such, because obviously, it wasn't well known. You have to be kind of really in the ultra community to probably know about it and want to do it.
Yeah.
But I think this year they've grown hugely. Again, using remote platforms very well to kind of get their name out there. But yeah, in terms of Marathon des Sables, that's obviously probably the most famous that everyone kind of, oh, have you heard of Marathon des Sables? Well, are you going to do that? And it's I'm probably not good enough to do Marathon des Sables. I feel like you need to be a pretty good level to even think about doing Marathon des Sables. In terms of just that it's a very competitive nature.
Oh, right, okay.
Not necessarily that you need to be elite, but you need to be very comfortable running that distance, and had probably a few years of ultra experience. Where with these other ones, I think they're a bit more catered to not necessarily a beginner ultra runner, but sounds bad, but a lower level ultra runner. In terms of the setup, the organisation, the camps, they have a lot more facilities there to look after you and make you, I guess, more comfortable in that setting.
Yeah.
What would what's your at this moment? You obviously have a lot more people taking up running, and it's great because obviously you got the Strava wankers, shall we say, the ones that are getting their 5Ks in like 10 minutes, or what was it? The world record today or something like that, in 12 minutes or something. But aside from that bit, with everyone now, with a lot more people taking up running, what would you recommend to them to do? Because obviously, as I say, following a plan is so essential. Yeah. But is there any, because for someone that has, you run so far, and that's such a different level where people now that have not been exposed to running at all are now just getting some trainers on and going out for a run and just doing
5K.
Yeah, just doing the 5. Is there, what would you say to them, and what would you give them as advice?
It's hard at the moment. I kind of touched on this in a post last week or the week before about this kind of whole hype around this 5K, this run 5, donate 5, nominate 5 thing at the moment. And whilst it's great because it's for a great cause, it's obviously, it can be pretty detrimental for a lot of people because they've suddenly just I'm going to run, and they go out and do a max effort. 5K. And then the problem with that is an ongoing thing because say they hit, I don't know, 30 minutes, let's just say. And then, I see specifically a couple posts over the past couple weeks, it was I'm going to try it again in 2 days. Okay. It's no,
you haven't got any fitter. Yeah.
What are you doing? And it's I'm going to shave off 2 minutes in 2 days because it's that easy.
Yeah.
And it's again, I had this conversation actually with Jordan. It's going into the gym, you snatch 60 kilo and be in 2 days I'm going to snatch 100.
It's only one more platinum each side.
I'm just going to put a bit more effort into it. And I'll just snatch 100, right? It's the same thing. The base of it is progression, right? You need to start small and slowly build up to it. And it doesn't matter whether it's a 5K or whether it's a half marathon, right? The protocols are still the same in terms of that progressive overload and making sure you have your base firstly, and you actually know kind of your threshold and your paces rather than just absolutely going. Like someone messaged me on Instagram like a couple of weeks ago with their stats from their 5K run, and they went off at like, what was it, a 340 kilometer, and they finished at like a 620.
Oh my god.
So it was just like they've literally like had like no like plan in place. They've just absolutely gone off like a nutter. And I think by like 2K they were already at like a 5:10 kilometer. So within the space of literally a kilometer and a half, they dropped off by like a minute and a half. Like you're not ready to handle that type of intensity and potentially that distance straight away. But yeah, the base of it is obviously progression. So ensuring you're comfortable just running for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then slowly starting to add intensity and sprinkling that in there at points rather than just like, okay, I'm going to go smash this 5K. Because I think the problem is now, as we kind of mentioned, like everyone sees ultra running as like I guess the cool thing now, right? And like wow, like that's really cool, you're running 100K. So they take for granted the 5Ks, the 10Ks, even the half marathons, and they don't take the respect that you should show these runs, because I mean they're tough. If you're not from like a running background or had the years of experience, I mean it's tough on your body, like not just physically but mentally as well. Like there's a lot of kind of mental resilience that goes into like PBing a 5K or a 10K. Do you know what I mean? It's not all just like, oh, I'm just going to cruise at this pace. Like you have to find. It's very similar to like a CrossFit workout, right? When it starts to absolutely suck, and you just need to mentally go to that pace. But in that case, we all are very comfortable with kind of, you've had experience with knowing your base on a load or like a rep range with like wall balls and all these things, so you know where to break it up and you know where to rest. Where with the run at the moment, no one understands that, so they're literally just going like crazy with it.
Yeah, they press start on their watch and run, and at the end they press stop. Oh, cool, that's how long it took. Not okay. Cool, what's my?
I was like to someone the other day. I was like, "What was your warm up?" And he was like, "I just like ran for like 500 meters, and then I just went into it."
It's the best.
Like from his house to the park was, I'm guessing, like half a K. Yeah. And then it's like went like balls to the wall.
Right, let's go.
Like, and it's just like walking into the gym, right, and just getting under 100 kilo barbell straight away and squatting it. Like you can do it at the time, but it's not going to serve you well in the long run. It's exactly the same with the running. Like in the moment, it might feel great, or for a very short time, a week, 2 weeks, but you're either going to pick up a niggle or you're going to get hugely disheartened because you haven't progressed, and then you're going to, what everyone deems at the moment, like hate running because you're not progressing. Where actually, if you just actually planned it a bit, you'd probably do quite well. Yeah, in this time, I mean, having a plan in place, especially for running, is obviously pretty crucial if you're looking to make that part of your weekly routine during this lockdown, which it seems most people are. Like, there's people out there, I think, that I've never seen run before in my life. So.
What would you say are the major pitfalls? Like you see everyone getting into it now. You just touched on the fact that you need to build a base first. Would you say that's probably the most common thing that people don't do, is that they just go out and try and smash intensity and test every day?
Yeah. I mean, like the biggest one, so relating it to intensity, is people have been picking like paces from the air. They're like, oh, I'm going to run at a 450 kilometer today. It's like, why? Why are you going to run at a 450? Like, or I see like a couple of days ago, like a post being like, oh, I'm really happy I managed to keep everything under this pace. But there's no like reasoning behind it. It's just like, oh, I chose this pace because maybe everyone else is running around that pace, and I'm gonna prove that I can do that. So yeah, just again building that base, because then that gives you the understanding of your pace, your heart rate zones, your threshold, your cadence, all these things that you need to take into account to actually run really well, like not just absolutely gun it. But yeah, just I mean, there's obviously that initial kind of testing phase, right? So say for someone wants to do a 10K, right, and they've not really got any running background in them. Say they haven't ran for like 2 years. You're not just going to get them to run out and test a 10K, a 5 or 10K, right? So it'll be like, okay, maybe go out for like a 2K and see how that feels, and we'll kind of look at your average splits of that, your heart rate, and all these things, cadence again, and then start to slowly increase that. So yeah, it's just starting off like small. Like your first couple weeks in a plan, all the runs should feel pretty easy. Like there should be nothing where you're dying or struggling to complete it. And then, like I said, you're slowly adding that intensity and ensure you're peaking for the time you're going to retest or test this 5K or 10K or whatever it is, rather than doing it at the beginning and then being like, okay, in 2 weeks' time I'm going to beat that, because you're not going to beat that, because you've done this max effort run here. One, it's going to take your body some time to recover from that. Generally, and you're probably going to have some aches and pains. And then you're so fixated on this time that you kind of just lose track of everything else. Refer back to like breathing patterns and stuff like this, which is hugely important in terms of just like performance in general, like, but running economy as well, and learning how to control your heart rate and where to push and where to pull back. And think about posture and relaxing the shoulders and using your arms, and all these things come into play, and you can't think about that if you're just absolutely going balls to the wall. Which everyone's doing at the moment.
I definitely feel where if someone has done this Run 5 and Donate 5 thing and they're looking to improve their 5K, I think from what you're saying, it's definitely worth them not looking to retest it as soon as they probably think they should, and basically then say, okay, if this is something I genuinely want to improve upon, I've now got this number, which was my max effort essentially. Why not now start programming for that? So, talk to a coach, or you've got plenty of, couch to 5Ks or whatever. You got all these plans online. Coach you in a 5K. So why not now follow one if you are interested in building that?
I mean, I think it's at the moment there's a huge thing of like kind of peer pressure around it, I guess, right? Because someone nominates you, you feel you have to do it. There's that pressure. I mean, like a couple of people have nominated me like over the past couple of weeks, and I was like, I'm not going to run it. Like someone nominated me for a weighted vest one. No.
I got nominated for a weighted vest. I also got nominated for a 12K, mate. So, so I was like, I haven't run more than 4.5 in however long, because I thought I was running a 5K.
You could do it on the ski erg.
I was like, oh shit.
Do it on the ski erg.
Yeah, but I
feel like there's a huge peer pressure at the moment around it. Which isn't a good thing, because people are too, I guess, afraid or too proud to say no. I guess that's the main thing. They're too proud to admit that actually at the moment that 5K might be a bit too steep for them. Like, and where you see a lot of people getting these like really good times of 20 minutes, 21 minutes, 22 minutes. I mean, anything 23, 24 minutes is a great time to 5Ks. And then obviously the lower down you go, obviously are probably going to be the more kind of veteran runners that know how to, again, manipulate pacing and have a strategy in place. But yeah, so I think people are just feeling that pressure at the moment. It's like, have to do it, run in a weighted vest, which is probably the most stupid thing you can do in this time. Like in reality, like again, why? Like why? Like there's no reasoning behind it, right? To make it harder. Okay, but that's not really a valid reason.
It's hard enough, mate.
Well, yeah, Well, I was about to say it's obviously all the CrossFitters that are doing it all weighted vest, but no, I mean, again, it doesn't add, any value to their long-term plan, right? And as you kind of mentioned earlier, we've been in lockdown now for 6 weeks, so hopefully most people have kind of got a structure in place and a progressive plan with their strength work or conditioning work in place. So to then potentially go and ruin that just by going out and running like a 5K and risking kind of hurting yourself ultimately. Because, I mean, that's the truth, right? If you're not conditioned to it, you're going to potentially hurt yourself for the sake of just, like, posting it on social media is not really
I guess that's one of the main challenges at this time is the pressure of social media. And what else do you see at this moment in time that's like with social? Like, what's some of the pressures that you're seeing, especially in lockdown where everyone seems to be on social media? What have you found?
Well, I feel like at the moment, everyone looking over kind of the majority of my page, it's like a lot of people seem to be, and I hate the word overtraining, because obviously a lot of factors come into that. But a lot of people seem to be doing too much training because they're like, okay, I've been sitting down for 4 hours at laptop, so now I'm just going to go and annihilate myself. And it seems like people's like training volume and frequency has jumped up massively as well. again, going back to kind of all the home workouts and these lives that people are doing, which again are a great thing, but can have a negative effect on someone that is like, oh, I'm just going to do a 30-minute quick sweat, but they've already trained twice already that day and stuff like that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that people are just like, I guess overtraining as such, even though then on the plus side, you're probably getting more sleep and your nutrition is potentially a bit better because you have more time. But ultimately, you still don't need to be training like 3 times a day. And
yeah, you say that, it's like, because it's people I've been seeing the same, that people are training 2-3 times a day, and it actually puts pressure on me, and I'm like, I'm being physically like active at the moment, doing all the stuff around the house and bits like that. So I'm being I'm expending a lot of energy, but I'm like, I need to be doing at least 2 sessions. I've got time, and it's like, so it for someone that is relatively, as classmate, relatively educated, especially in my own body, to then be feeling pressures from seeing other people doing it, you think, I probably should be doing it myself. It's definitely
there's definitely, I think we all feel that pressure at points. I mean, you look at someone else, maybe a friend or someone, you're like, oh, blimey, they look like they're killing it at the moment, and you feel that pressure. And of course, it's a different thing. Like, I mean, so 3 times a week I do a double session. So I do a run in the morning, then I do some strength work in the afternoon. But generally, that's one of them days. One of them days is on a recovery day. And then the other 2 sessions, again, are pretty kind of minimal in terms of intensity. So like today, for instance, I've done like a run this morning, and that's my only session for today. Like, because it wasn't tough, but it was enough where it caused enough kind of stress and fatigue. So I think, it's a huge pressure at the moment for either coaches or just people looking on social media at coaches and feel like, I need to do this, or I'm just going to do this live workout. So I'd say that's the biggest thing at the moment, kind of that pressure to almost perform, even though ultimately at the moment most of us haven't got anything to perform for, if that makes sense. Like you look in the CrossFit field, everything's been cancelled, right? So there's nothing going on there. The running field, marathon, everything's been cancelled. So like I said, I've got a few clients that are now holding on to the fact, just like myself, that potentially in October, November we'll have a certain race, but there's no guarantee of that, right? So you're slowly building towards that. But initially, when the lockdown happened, we reined in everything. That most clients took about 3-4 days off, because some were peaking for like Paris Marathon, Barcelona Marathon, coming into London Marathon, and all these things. So the intensity was pretty high. And now we're so just like, I guess, kind of maintaining for most people. From my point of view, for most clients at the moment, it's just maintenance mileage. Again, maybe tweaking a few things to focus on now. Okay, we've now got an extra 6 months. We can now start to rebuild and focus on kind of speed rather than this, and put a bit more effort into the strength work. But for most people, you're kind of aimlessly training, I guess. Yeah. If that makes sense, because
completely. So we were talking about in one of the recent podcasts. It's like, why are you training in the first place? Yeah. And a lot of people just feel like they should be doing it because everyone else is.
Yeah.
So I think, apart from obviously following your Instagram page and people like yourself, when it comes to, if the people are wanting to improve their running, what kind of, say, strengths or, say, stability stuff should they be doing at home rather than just going out for a run? Because obviously now they could find, say, a 5K plan or something like that, or 10K or whatever they choose. But what are some things that you would maybe tell people to start looking into to help improve their times?
I mean, firstly, creating some sort of warm-up routine that works for you specifically. Yeah. Again, that's the thing where everyone goes wrong. Like, when I first take on clients, one of the first things we kind of talk about is their routine around their runs or their strength sessions, and they basically don't have one. I had a conversation yesterday with a new client who has been struggling on her run for like the past week or so, and we kind of spoke about routine before, and she doesn't have one. She wakes up, drinks some water, maybe has a coffee, and then heads out, and your body's not prepared, right, to do that. So creating some sort of warm-up routine, mobility routine, activation routine, whatever you want to call it, pre-run, to kind of prepare the body for what you're about to do, right? So again, obviously the main focus potentially will be around the hips, the ankles, getting that move in, and opening things up there. But again, it's going to be slightly different for everyone. So again, like, I mean, myself, I'll put kind of examples of run preps on like my page and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that's like the golden ticket and that's going to make you run. Again, I'm just choosing potentially like a midline, a hip and ankle drill that's going to prepare you potentially either for some higher impact or mobilize the area. But you still need to probably do more of like outside of that as well.
Yeah.
So generally the way I do it with clients is kind of 3 to 5 mobility movements, like upon waking. Let's say they're going to run first thing in the morning, which most people are. Again, just things to get moving, right? So a mix of like cars and just like active positions. And then pre-run, I'm a big lover of loading before running. So doing a bodyweight glute bridge for me doesn't hold much value. For most people, if you think you're strength training 2-3 times a week, just doing a bodyweight frog pump is not like, Rob, say for instance for you, right? I mean, that's, like, your compounds are big, right? So doing a frog pump is not going to have huge value for you.
No.
We're adding a bit of load, and by no means am I getting barbells out and stuff like that, but adding some external load onto it, creating kind of external factors in the movement and stability factors, give it a bit more bang for your buck and prepare the body and actually kind of build that intensity before you actually get out to run. So again, I'm a big lover of like some like low level plyometric work before you get out and run, whether that's kind of like ankling drills, pogos, like high catch pogos, these type of things, lateral hops and sticks. Again, these things that are getting kind of the proprioception and the mind working as well, rather than, again, you've woke up half hour ago and you're just going to go out and do things. So yeah, I'm a big lover of loading before running. Through kind of my own work and with clients, I found this kind of worked really well. Instead of just giving them the kind of stimulus to get out there and feel like everything's kind of sinking and working in sync, but also just mentally as well. Like if you naturally make a movement harder in your warm up, you should generally switch on a bit in your head, and then you're a bit more prepared to go and build that intensity outside. So yeah, warm up will be the main factor in people's routines if they're starting to increase their running. And of course, around that, you talk about kind of additional mobility work and strength work, and include that in there, and passive work in there. But ultimately, a run warm up will serve most people pretty well because they're not doing it.
And in particular, so once you just a little bit beyond the warm up, and if you're thinking about strengthening exercises or anything like that, so with people's lack of equipment at the moment, is there anything you would say focus more on? Is there anything in particular that you've been utilizing yourself with lower access to kit? I
mean, so I'm lucky enough that I was able to take a barbell and stuff from the clinic and stuff like that. But actually, I've been using just dumbbells and kettlebells. Just it's been a lot easier, and kind of getting a bit lazy in the mornings, getting the kit out.
Yeah.
So the main thing and what we've been doing with clients is obviously playing around with tempo, right? So isometrics and eccentrics in there, and even concentric work to build that intensity there. Also then looking at lever length, right? So loading positions, so whether your suitcase, contralateral, overhead, front rack. And that's an easy way to make a movement harder or easier, right? And or combine a tempo and a loading position to increase that intensity as such. So yeah, loading positions is probably the easiest way to kind of change the stimulus and still create a good enough stimulus that can replicate what you've been doing in the gym to an extent, and kind of give you something new, give your mind something new to think about, rather than just doing the same thing all the time. So yeah, playing around with kind of lever length, kettlebell or a dumbbell is probably the biggest thing.
Nice. And so I think as a takeaway from kind of what you're saying, definitely if we think about everything on social media and like the as you discussed, like the broad variety of training modalities at the moment, the big takeaway from this, and I think the podcast which we just released as well, is remembering what your why is, making sure that what you're doing is in the direction of your purpose. Because if you're wanting to say improve your running, then start to think about how you can train to improve it, even if it's just say a 1 a week run, but then maybe your strength training could then start to include aspects that are going to help that running session. Because if you're only choosing to go outdoors say once a week, because everyone's choosing different things. So I think remembering that and not just following everyone's stuff online. I think that's been quite a theme on a lot of the stuff that Ash and myself have been talking about. And I think a lot of the fitness industry, the people I've been discussing now, this is, I think, the reality of it, where there is a abundance of information out there, which there always has been.
Yeah.
But the fact it's just right in your face, I think it's such an important time to really make sure you've got your why written down and understanding, and then make sure you're working towards that.
I mean, I think that goes from a client perspective as well, or someone on social who's following all these different trainers. But from going back to kind of the remote coaching in specific, from a coaching point of view, especially during this time, again, you have so much time on your hands potentially to post and do all these things, where if you're not being true to yourself in your posts and your content, it's not going to benefit your business.
No.
Because again, you're just putting stuff out there that 90% of other people are putting out. So people have already seen it. Yeah. They're probably just giving it a like because they know you as such, right? You're not adding value to it. So in terms of, you're putting all this effort into recording a video for your Instagram post, writing up a little intro to it or whatnot, and then you're not necessarily making any profit from it. Like, you're not adding any value to people, or financially you're not making any gain from it, which is obviously a huge important factor in remote coaching. You need clients to be paying you to make a living, right? You've not got a guaranteed income. So I think from a coaching perspective is where most people are going wrong, and potentially where I've had success, not necessarily on social media, because I mean, we all know we've got friends who have got thousands of followers and blue ticks and whatnot, but that doesn't necessarily mean success or that they're a great trainer to train with remotely, which I also think is a quite a confusing thing for a lot of people as well. But the posts that I do put out, generally have like quite a good interaction. If you look at the stats in terms of like people saving them or forwarding them to people, they're generally like received very well. So I try and keep that in mind. And as we kind of spoke about before this started, is conversations or cases that I'm currently having with clients will determine my Instagram content. Yeah. One, because I don't have to put too much effort into thinking about what to post. Like, I don't have to sit there and be like, oh, on Wednesday I'm gonna post this, and on Friday I'm gonna post this. Like, it comes naturally, right? You've had a conversation. Yeah. Okay, you might actually be filming some stuff for a client, so then just adapt it slightly to make it more, I guess, generalized, and put it into a post. So you're not wasting effort and time. So if you don't get anything from it as such, it's not like, oh, damn, I'm really upset that post didn't get 100 likes and such. So that's something I bear in mind with my Instagram content. But yeah, just keeping it very specific to what I do. Like, there's no point in me posting about body composition, or like, do you know what I mean? It has no interest to most of my followers as such. Firstly, to my clients, it has no relevance. To myself, I'll just be doing it for the sake of putting a post out there. So I try to keep everything on the BW Commando Fitness page and the Run Strong page. I mean, just run specific, relate it to running somehow. Even if there's not a huge kind of clear crossover to it, there's some sort of benefit from like hip work into running gait and all these things. So always having that kind of, this can benefit this for this reason. Yeah, and just keeping it very specific. And I think that's benefited me hugely in then taking on clients. Like over the past couple of weeks, I've taken on like 3 clients via Instagram, just through like posts that I put up, and then they're really kind of interested in what we're doing. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing for coaches, is like keeping your Instagram content relevant to your remote coaching. Otherwise, it's pointless, basically.
I like that. I think that's a nice little summary of today's conversation. I think you really put that nicely there. And I think direction and clarity, we you know, Ash and myself have been touching on this quite a bit, and you know, our last one was pretty much all about this. And I think it's really nice to hear someone like yourself who, with as much experience that you've had in remote coaching and, also just in training in general, it's good to hear the type of things that you're saying. So, yeah.
I mean, I think at the moment in this current situation, kind of the remote coaching and the social media, and it kind of all falls into each other in terms of like the pressure you feel as a coach to deliver things to try and help benefit your business, but can then ultimately have a negative effect. And from a client perspective, doing too much via social media in terms of all these workouts that they then get confused with remote coaching and the service that it is.
Yeah.
But I think if you find a good coach that you trust and ultimately you've got the results from, I mean, you're laughing because from a client perspective, right, ultimately it's cheaper, so it's more financially feasible for them to stay with that month on month or however you set your packages out. And then from a coaching point of view, it's a great way to, again, build this remote platform without having to, I guess, take on too many clients. Because I feel like in a one-to-one setting, when you're in a gym, you've obviously got these overheads, right? So you have the rent and all these things that come into play. So you naturally feel this pressure to get, I don't know, when I was at Gymbox, the magic number was like, you need to be doing 40 hours a week. Like that was like the magic number because the rent was extortionate and all these other factors, right, and travel and all these things. So I think with the remote coaching, obviously there's a pressure to earn and such because obviously we've all got bills to pay and stuff like that. But I think you can really kind of relax, I guess. Like now, I guess I'm at a point with my remote coaching where I feel like I don't need to get stressed about clients and the fact I can really just focus on, let's say, the 12 active clients that I've got right now. I can really just focus on them and put kind of all my effort into them so they're gaining huge amounts of value. And so they're going to stay with me for the next year or 2 years, whatever it is. I mean, I'm pretty lucky at the moment. Probably 85% of my clients I've worked with for 2 or more years. And then, like I said, I've taken on a few new clients recently, but that's potentially just during this lockdown period or so. But so there's huge value in that. And for me, that's a better situation than having 30 clients coming in and out every couple months, because again, you're going to go through periods of like, oh, I'm doing great, and then, oh no, now I'm really stressed because 5 clients have finished. Now I need to try and build up my remote coaching because I've got this magic number. So I feel like if you reach a point with remote coaching where like you're earning enough money to pay your bills, blah blah blah, like just focus on like the clients you have, because more isn't always better with remote coaching, because it can suddenly you can be drowning in work. And I think we've all been there at some point, that you've got 10 training blocks to write and you've got screenings to look over and all these things, you've got emails to reply to, blah, blah, and it can be very overwhelming. And because you don't have that in-person contact with them, a client can feel neglected very easily, I think. Where in a one-to-one setting, it's a lot easier to kind of keep that client on board, I'd say, because you have that hour with them 3-4 times a week. Whereas if with the remote stuff, if you're not constantly interacting with clients, giving feedback, and all these type of things, eventually they're going to get fed up because they'll feel like you don't care about them as such. So we kind of touched on it the other day, Rob, when we spoke briefly about kind of the feedback around programming and training blocks and all these things. And I remember like when I was doing one-to-one PT, I rarely used to ask for feedback. I think maybe like a couple times.
Yeah.
Maybe started it and then just got lazy or kind of started to take things for granted and just used to skip from training block to training block to training block. Okay, here's your goal. What's the next goal? When now it's like feedback not only after a training block but on a weekly basis. Like when I do my Sunday check-ins, the first question is, okay, how was the week? What worked well? What didn't work well? Do you know what I mean? This is like informal feedback that adds huge value to your remote base. One, because it shows you care about the client, because you're directly asking them what worked for you, what didn't. And then you can then take that away and build and formulate, whether it's like putting that on like to a spreadsheet and having that in mind for next time when another client goes through a similar cycle, and you have these things to kind of review and be like, okay, that didn't work, let's change that here. So I think one of the biggest things in remote coaching is that feedback. And like I said, that can be very informal. It can be over the phone, it can be on Skype, whatever it is, but just getting that, okay, a few points I really, even if it's just a case of like, I enjoyed this, I didn't enjoy that. Right, and then you can be like, okay, that part you didn't enjoy is a necessity because of this, or whether it's something a bit more in depth from your client about kind of training volume and all these type of things. But yeah, I think that's the bigger thing. Like for me, on a weekly basis, I'm asking for feedback, and then at the end of a block, I'm like pressuring clients to give me like in-depth feedback, not just like a couple sentences, but like paragraphs. Basically, I want to know kind of everything you thought, good and bad. Because again, bad stuff is actually where you improve. Yeah. Not the good stuff. Like someone telling you, oh, that training block was amazing. Like, doesn't help you get better. No. Yeah. Right. So the stuff where they're like, actually, this didn't work very well, or I felt like during this period we didn't have as much contact as we could, or stuff that I would have liked this to happen. That's the stuff where you really learn, and you implement that into the next training block for that specific client, and then suddenly they're on board. The trust kind of factor is there hugely. It shows that you care about them, listen to them. So I think, yeah, for me, that's like the number one kind of rule, I guess, with remote coaching is like feedback.
Yeah, get rid of your ego and ask feedback, because at the end of the day, good or bad, it's always it can help you, because if it is something that's good, saying, oh, that was a really good block, as I say, you might then need some more specifics about it. Yeah. But it was a good block. Cool, okay, at least I'm doing the right thing for this person. Now, what can I do to improve, or why was it good? Can I do more of that to that person? So I think, as you say, feedback is so key. So if people wanted to find out more about you or anything like that, where can they find you on social media?
So Instagram, BW Commando Fitness, fairly simple. And I don't have anything else. I don't have Facebooks, Twitters, and all them things. Other than that, it's just emails, bwcommandofitness@gmail.com. And then aside from my personal Instagram, if you want to get more focused in a community aspect, we have our Run Strong page as well. And we do intakes for that every 12 weeks. We take on 10 runners and kind of build them up for a 12-week training block. But yeah, that's the main contact points for me at the moment.
Nice. And beyond?
Beyond at the moment, to be fair, Jordan's doing a lot more than me. Luckily, just because the type of clients we've got on there at the moment are more specific to his skill set than me. Okay. So we've taken on a couple of clients the past couple of weeks. I've just kind of helped with their screening process and kind of given them the feedback. But in terms of the actual program at the moment, Jordan's doing a great job with that. So I feel like I can't take too much credit for that at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that's the nature of obviously Beyond at the moment. It is focused more towards the CrossFit community and that type of person. So specifically, unless they want to improve their running performance or particular strength issues, then Jordan's kind of dealing with the masses on that. But yeah, Beyond Programming on Instagram or admin@beyondprogramming.co.uk for any email inquiries. And with that, we have multiple packages, like I said, from weightlifting to strength to endurance bias, or like a complete package if you're looking to kind of work through every kind of stimulus in there, which then enables you to work with both me and Jordan on one platform. But if you're generally working on a solo package, you're working with either of us. Like I said, it would probably likely be Jordan at the moment.
Nice. Sounds really good. Well, firstly, I'd just like to thank you a lot for coming on today, mate. It's been really good. Good chat.
Having me. It's good to have a chat.
Yeah. And Ash, anything?
No, thanks, Brad. That was awesome. Yeah, great to see you, mate. And hopefully catch you at WIT in not too long.
Yeah, let's hope gyms aren't closed for too much longer.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for listening. As always, you can don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you are listening to us on there, we're all on Spotify. And I've been a bit more consistent. We're getting them up on YouTube as well recently. So we are also on YouTube if you want to see our faces. So thanks a lot for listening, guys. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Love it.
Cheers, guys.